You know, the RDog case illustrates why the Pennsylvania SPCA is different. We take on the toughest cases and we see them all the way through to the end.
Often when we have a case, all of the dogs are named with the same letter so that we can track them through their time here. So the RDogs are Raina, Roxy, Ranger, Rogue, Rags, and Runner.
We received a call for these dogs. It was late in the evening. The Philadelphia police called us through our hotline. It was very dark and cold that night, so the wooded area, it was kind of like a makeshift shed the person was living in. There was no electric and there was no water in the property at all. I was walking towards the shed where I can hear multiple dogs barking. I observed 2 deceased dogs that were laying on a blanket area. When we opened the shed, the dogs that came towards me, I can also see that they needed medical attention. They were very scabby and no hair.
When the dogs arrived, they were completely hairless. They were covered in bloody, crusty, infected wounds. We performed in-depth physical examinations, and we also performed diagnostics such as skin scrapes, which helped us to diagnose the severe demodectic mange, and ear cytologies, which helped us to diagnose the ear infections. Some of the dogs were hospitalized for an extended period of time due to the severe skin infections and being underweight. It took months for some of the dogs' hair to grow back. We didn't know what color their fur was for months to years.
Several of the dogs needed more advanced surgery. Raina had a condition called inguinal hernias. Roxy had multiple masses on her that we took off surgically. Both Runner and Rags needed to have surgery for a condition called vulvar hyperplasia, which is not serious if treated right away, but if left alone, can cause big problems.
The RDogs were brought to my attention as animals that were in the shelter that needed some behavioral support and were also on protective custody. So a protective custody animal is an animal that we don't have ownership of, and so we can't necessarily adopt out or we can't send to a special rescue to address some needs. So we filed what's called a property disposition in order to gain ownership of these animals. The owner of the dogs was cited for animal cruelty. He was not able to stand trial in the criminal court because he was judged incompetent. We will not see a criminal resolution to this story. We won't see a guilty, we won't see a not guilty. We were successful via the property disposition to gain ownership of the RDogs.
When an animal comes to us, they have to go through several different procedures to become ready for adoption. In the case of the RDogs, they needed a lot of extra help medically as well as behaviorally.
Well, the interesting thing about the RDogs is that they didn't all have the same behavior profile. Specifically, Roxy and Raina were 2 of the dogs of the RDogs that were a little scared about strangers and unusual looking people. When we realize that a dog is under-socialized in that way, what we'll do is we'll try to introduce them to unusual looking strangers or new situations and associate those things with pleasant circumstances rather than fearful ones.
Yes! Good girl! Yes.
They've both gotten much better. It's not something that you solve, it's something that you'll work on. And so when those dogs find their adopters, that's something that we'll educate the adopters on how to do, so that they can continue to do that into the future and keep getting those dogs more and more comfortable.
Runner, we thought, was a great candidate to go to our Danville site. And that's a more rural community, and Runner was a nervous dog, and we thought she would do better out there in the country, having a little bit more individual attention. And now she lives in a home where she sleeps with a young boy every day, and they dress her up in little dresses, and she's a complete member of the family. New Leash on Life is a rescue partner that helps inmates adjust to society. When our behavior team met Rogue, they decided he would be a great candidate for this program. Out of that program, Rogue found a forever home. Rags found her home through our foster program. In Rags' case, her foster family fell in love with her and wanted to keep her forever. 2 of the RDogs are still here awaiting adoption, Raina and Roxy. And they've had a few more challenges than some of the other RDogs, but we know we're still going to be able to find them great homes.
The RDogs is a wonderful example of teamwork, of dedicated professionals at every level of the organization coming together to really fulfill the mission on a daily basis.
We would not be able to do our jobs without our donors, period.
For people like our Officer Sosa to go out on the street and do that work and to bring it back to Shelter Hospital and Dr. Germanis and her team, all the way through the whole system, it requires and depends on generous people, generous donors. Knowing that they're behind us, that they care about the work we do. And again, they don't necessarily see it, our donors don't necessarily see it up front themselves, but I think they know that we're going to answer the call.